All righty. We've got an AMA Friday lined up for you. We're going to dive into the mailbag, and we're going to sift through some of these questions that we've got coming in. We also post that every week before we drop an AMA Friday, so make sure you're watching for that post on our social media group on Facebook called Houndsman XP Podcast Group. If you're not a member there, go over and subscribe. Join in on the fun. We drop a lot of information there. So we're basically going to talk about a few different things. And just to give you an idea of what we're going to talk about, Jerry Moll is going to join me and answer the age-old question of, are the dogs of the 80s and 90s better than the dogs of today? We're going to make that side-by-side comparison. We're going to talk about our experiences. We're going to answer that question. Also, I have got to cover the questions I'm getting about elite nutrition products. And it's not a promo or an information, infomercial, whatever you want to call it. We're getting tons of orders coming in and questions come along with that stuff. And I just want to address a few things that I am seeing order-wise on elite nutrition products. I am also getting tons of messages right now because we made the huge release on Monday of our Ledged Out Bourbon. And I just want to take a few minutes and cover some basics on that and answer some of the questions that I'm getting about how to order and all of the stuff that goes along with it, and kind of give you a little backstory about why we went that route and how we came up with Ledged Out. So let's get right into it. And we have a guy that is so faithful, and I appreciate him so much because he kind of lets the air out of the room on this whole thing, kind of tones down the seriousness a little bit, well, a lot, and always asks a great question that kind of sets the tone for an AMA Friday. Derek Torminen of Outer Agenda Artwork asks this question. Homer Simpson, Elmer Fudd, and Fred Flintstone express interest in running coons one night, but you only have room for two of them. Which one isn't getting the invite? I don't even know where Derek comes up with this stuff. He's asked questions about Sasquatch, and you go back and check out the AMA Fridays. Derek's always got some kind of question that is so ludicrous, so far-fetched, and it gives us license to kind of goof around a little bit. But so we gotta choose two between Homer Simpson, Elmer Fudd, and Fred Flintstone. And this really puts me in a tight spot. I grew up on Looney Tunes, and Elmer Fudd was always after that wascally wabbit. So he's got plenty of hunting experience. I might even be able to learn something from Elmer Fudd. Even if I learn what not to do, there could be a lesson there. So then we've got Fred Flintstone, caveman. He was just trying to make a living for his Stone Age family and living in his little rock house with his saber-toothed tiger cat and Dino the dog. And, later on, Fred Flintstone and his wife Wilma had a daughter named Pebbles. And for several episodes, she was just a baby, but eventually she grew up, and it was at the right time in my life where I thought Pebbles was pretty hot. So if we could turn the hands of the clock back about 20 years or 30 years, I might arrange where I pick Fred up at his house and maybe nonchalantly invite Pebbles to go along. And then we have Homer Simpson. Homer's your typical suburban guy that is always getting in trouble, a complete doofus. He would be great for like our YouTube channel to get him on the YouTube channel just for the outtakes of that whole thing. But there's also an opportunity there with Homer because, he is from suburbia and he probably doesn't understand hunting a whole lot. And I think I could impart some wisdom on Homer and get him and the whole Simpson family in. I look at them as the non-hunting public. They never took a stand that they were against hunting that I can remember, and they've never done an episode where they were hunting that I can remember. So there's a possibility there where we could actually bring into the fold more hunters, the whole Simpson family, and then he's always hanging out at the local tavern, and so he could give us a positive light. There's a lot to consider here. But when it comes right down to it, I guess I have to answer this way. 30 years ago, I would have invited Fred, invited Pebbles to come along, and called Homer and Elmer Fudd on the way to the woods and said I had a change of plans. But in 2024, and to respect the sanctity of my marriage and not get the big D, I'm going to have to go with Elmer and Homer Simpson on this one. But it's going to be Elmer Fudd Stone. I want to take that dude hunting. All right, moving on. Thanks, Derek, for another obscure yet intriguing, thought-provoking question. While we're on the topic of Derek, I got to tell you, because this feeds right into what I want to talk to you about next. We're going to talk bourbon here a little bit. So about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, Derek had designed a graphic for us that involved two hounds baying a mountain lion on a rock ledge. And we were in the process of just promoting that as a t-shirt design. And I also had this back thing on the back burner. I always thought it would be cool to do what's called white label of a bourbon, where you take a product and you select the product and then you put your label and your logo on it. And in the process, that project and the bourbon became known as Ledged Out. Ledged Out, straight bourbon whiskey. And Joe the neighbor and I were planning it. We were looking around for people to bottle it for us. We were looking for logistics, the whole 9 yards. And finally, the credit goes to Joe. He found a company that would bottle this bourbon for us. And I want to give you some backstory on the bourbon itself that we chose. And then we'll get into answering the question about how to order it, shipping costs, all the details around this and why we're doing it. But before we get there, the whole project was always supposed to be as an opportunity for us as a hound hunting community, bunch of houndsmen that could have this bottle of bourbon that was specifically labeled for us. And part of the proceeds for that would go to combat the onslaught of animal rights activists and different things like that. So we were going to donate, and we still are. We're still going to donate a portion of the sale of every bottle to our brothers who are lion hunters. And if you get a chance, check it all out on social media. It's all there. But read the back of that. I'm actually pretty proud of that write-up on the back. I wrote that because I believe it. And I want you to understand something. Houndsman XP was the only reason this thing was created was to protect our lifestyle, the things we love, hunting with hounds. I didn't go into this thing. I didn't create a podcast because I had another business that I wanted you to buy products from. And I have no problem with anybody doing that. So don't get me wrong. Don't read that wrong. I'm just saying that the sole purpose of Houndsman XP was to be a voice for the houndsman, integrate us into the conversations about responsible wildlife management, and get us a seat at the table, and stop hiding from negative press or bad press or whatever, and take it head on. Just find it, look at it, and take it square on, and start developing our own narrative that tells the story of who we are and what we do. and also talk about the added values that we provide to the wildlife populations, wildlife management, and the hunting community overall. Included in that was our ability to reach out to people who may not be houndsmen, but needed to hear our story. They needed to hear the truth about who we are and what we do. So when you look at the back of the bottle, you see the label on the back, it tells our story very clearly. We are the ones who are responsible for wildlife successes. In particular, in this case, would be the mountain lion. There is no other group of people who value the mountain lion, a sustainable, healthy population of mountain lions more than lion hunters and houndsmen who hunt lions. There are tons of rabbit paths I could take on this thing, but basically the main message is this. When the elk hunters and the deer hunters look at the mountain lion as a predator that's affecting their life and dwindling their numbers, lion hunters are the ones that step up and say, ho, 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 wait a minute. Wait, pump the brakes here, Hoss. We do a lot more than just reduce predators. We also help you as an ungulate hunter to have healthy deer and elk herds. Wild Sheep is putting millions of dollars into restocking and repopulating areas with bighorn sheep. You've heard Shorty Gorham talk about the work that he was doing on those studies where they were repopulating bighorn sheep, and he was doing the predator control there and collecting data for that whole project. On the other side of the issue, you have the anti-hunting crowds that are saying that mountain lions are endangered and that hunters don't care anything about the mountain lion populations. We're only out there to kill mountain lions, which we know is the farthest from the truth. So when we designed that back label, we wanted to tell our story. And bourbon is a tool to get our story out. Very clearly written. We managed to bring all of that together in a bottle of bourbon that obviously aren't just going to be sold to lion hunters, but if this is sitting on a shelf, the label is designed in a way that's going to catch people's attention. And I don't know about you, but if there's a write-up on the back of a box of cereal, I grew up reading the back of cereal boxes, but I guess it carried over. If there is a write-up, I'm going to read the backstory, and that's why it's on the back label. It tells our story. So Ledged Out whiskey, bourbon whiskey, is mash bill. It's got a high level of corn, a little bit of rye, and a little bit of malted barley in there. So it's a real smooth drinking. 5.5-year-old. It's been aged 5.5 years in the whiskey barrel. It's been proofed down to 90 proof, so it's a very smooth bourbon. If you're a bourbon connoisseur, I think you're going to like this. If you're new to bourbon, I think you're going to be able to try it. But even if you don't drink it, the main thing is this is a lifestyle brand that represents me. It represents you as a houndsman, and we're going to take a portion of that sale and give it to the people that are on the front lines fighting that fight to keep lions managed properly, to keep hunters in the field, and to ultimately save mountain lions and lion hunting. All together, it's a win-win-win. Three-way win right there. Even if you just buy a bottle and set it on your shelf, it's a small batch, so it's a single barrel, and this is a first run of it. So it says right on the label, single barrel, edition 1. Someday, 30 years from now, somebody's going to be shopping on eBay and find this thing, or Marketplace on Facebook. Well, you can't do it there because you can't buy alcohol on Facebook. But you're going to find this bottle. It's going to be a first edition Ledged Out bottle. And my hope is it's very valuable. It's going to be valuable to lion hunters. I guarantee you that. So I don't think you want to pass up an opportunity. So how do you get it? You have to go to the Houndsman XP website, click on the link in our shop, and go to the bourbon link there. It'll take you to a site called Shared Pour. There's a lot of legalities, and that's why it's taken us so long to release this, because we had to cross all the I's, dot all the T's, and make sure the tax man was paid, where we could ship this thing legally throughout the United States. And you still can't get it in Tennessee and Texas, though. Every other state's fair game. Send it to your brother-in-law in Oklahoma and drive up and get it. Send it to Seth down in Las Cruces and go across the state line and pick it up from Seth. Whatever you got to do. But there's a lot of legalities there. It's at a company called Shared Pour. It's an online retailer, and that's the only place you can get it right now. I got to talk to you about shipping as well. Shipping prices are dictated because shipping companies require extra fees for liquid, flammables, things like that. You know, if you've ever shipped anything from the post office and they say, is there anything liquid, flammable, hazardous? And if you say yes, then they pump the brakes and charge you more money. So that's why the shipping is so high. It's $21.99, I believe, $21 and some change for the shipping. That is outrageous for one bottle of bourbon. The good news is it's a flat rate shipping. Whether you buy one bottle or you buy 12 bottles, your shipping is only going to be $21 and some change. So buy more than one bottle. Split your shipping charge up among all the bottles. You can buy up to 12 bottles for one shipping charge. If you run a hound organization and you want to know how to turn a bottle of whiskey into $1,200 for your organization, then give me a call. I was at the Freedom Hunters Banquet this past weekend, and they sold 3 different bottles of bourbon on their live auction for over $1,200 each. And it's doable. It can be done. So get with me. Send me a message. I'll get with you. We'll hash it all out. I'll tell you exactly how they did it. I think it's a great opportunity for you to be able to raise some money with an item that is unique and is going to be a collector's item. So to recap, and then we'll move on, is there were only 200 of these bottles available, so it's in limited supply. You need to get on it. You need to make your purchase because we are going to run out of stock. We've been selling bottles all week long, and it's good news for lion hunters, I can tell you that. Go to houndsmanxp.com. And we've got a hot link there that'll take you right to Shared Pour, and you can get your bottle. All right, we'll move on from here. So I've got to take a break. We've got to put a sponsorship ad in here, because without sponsors, without our patrons, then we can't put this show together and keep lion hunting, keep hound hunting, keep coon hunting. All of us houndsmen out there together, we have no voice if we can't keep the lights on. So let's take a quick break for this word from our sponsor at OnX Hunt. Hey guys, are you using OnX Hunt on your phone, the app? It's pretty cool, man. We just got back from this trip that we're talking about right now. So I hunted Louisiana and Texas, and everybody was on OnX, looking at landowners, looking at terrain, looking at all the features that those comprehensive maps have to offer. And I wasn't even using the map cards in my GPS. I'm just coordinating everything with my GPS and looking at OnX, and boom, I had to retrieve dogs off of a neighboring property in Louisiana. And when we were in Texas, we were checking landowner information. We had to do it there as well. And it made it super easy to be able to find out who owned the property, gain access and permission to get that done. You need to be using OnX, and you can check out OnX by going to houndsmanxp.com, go to our sponsor page, click on their logo, big red square with a white X in it, go to their website and sign up for their elite membership. You'll get access to all 50 states, all kinds of cool features. You can mark routes, trails, signs, all of it. It's all right there. Enter the promo code HXP20 and get 20% off. Know where you stand with OnX. All right, for this next portion of the AMA Friday, I had to go out and find some old guy that could help me get through this part of it, but not too old that he can't remember.
It's getting there.
Jerry Moll is on the mic. He just had a birthday, Jerry. So happy belated birthday on that. Shares the same day as my anniversary.
That's weird.
Yeah. Plus we celebrated both with an eclipse.
Yeah.
Pretty important stuff, evidently.
It sounds like it. A lot of people came to town for your anniversary and my birthday.
That's for sure. That's for sure. All right. So the question, I mean, I see this question come up all the time, and I get personal questions about this. I'm sure you've talked about it in the past, Jerry, but the question is, are the dogs of the 80s and 90s better than they are today? And I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. I see people talk about trainability, intelligence, all of that stuff. And I mean, we've both been doing this since the 80s, and you were a little more advanced in the 80s than I was in your coon hunting career. You were actually winning some hunts and making a name for yourself. So what do you think?
Well, I think anytime you have this kind of discussion, you got to temper it with the fact there's always a nostalgia factor involved, or as some people might call it, the deader the better.
Deader the better. Yeah.
So, we may remember some things inaccurately, but we still remember them. But it is something that people ask me quite often. What's the biggest differences, or how have things improved, or how have things gotten worse? Things like that.
Well, what's your answer? I mean, are there dogs that you wish you could get back from the early days?
There are a few dogs from the 80s that I'm glad I don't have. And there's a handful that I had in the mid to late 80s and early 90s that I would love to have back.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that people talk about a lot is the nose and the tracking ability. Some people lump them together, some people don't. But the reality is, when you breed for dogs with a lot of nose, you get some idiots that can smell a track that's 2 weeks old, but can't run it.
Right.
And when you breed for ability to tree layup coons, you're going to get a bunch of idiots that tree on a tree that might be 20 yards or more from the tree where the coon is. So it's, you got to sort through several of them before you get the dog that runs a cold track the way you want them to, or treats the layups accurately. And for no other reasons, just even if you took those two reasons, it's more expedient to breed for a dog that hunts hard and what we used to say coals their tracks. In other words, it doesn't pay any attention at all to tracks. Either they can smell or they can't smell. But, assuming they can a little bit anyway, they know better than to stop and mess with them.
Yeah.
If it's a training
issue. Do you think that's man-made, or is that a natural ability? Because when I hear people talk about calling tracks, to me, that is, I look at it as a sign of intelligence. The dog knows that this is a track that I know I'm going to be able to move out of here and take, so they don't mess with the other junk. What's your interpretation of that?
Well, I'd say there are some dogs that can do that.
Uh-huh.
But I'd say this day and age, my opinion is that's probably the lesser of the two examples you gave.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably more like with the advent of the Garmin and the ability to shock and tone immediately and see where the dog is and what they're doing. People tend to, if a dog spends too much time in one area, they'll either shock them out of there or tone them out of there or whatever you want to say. Sure, there are dogs that once they get a certain amount of age and hunting on them, they will learn when they smell too rough a track to skip on out and either pick up that track later, the same track, or find a better hot one. I'm sure that happens.
Yeah,
I would say the majority.
Go ahead. No,
I was just going to say the majority of them, I'd say this day and age, are probably trained to not mess with that stuff, because treeing a hot coon up a bush is a lot easier to score than spending 20 minutes trailing a track,
right,
and ending up on a den tree or something.
Yeah. I think one thing I've seen a lot of, the dog will go ahead and strike. A lot of times they'll go ahead and strike on that rough track, but they'll carry on down the ridge until, they won't necessarily take that track, but they get their mouth open. So they get on the card, and then they'll move on down the ridge and find a hotter track. They still can't help themselves from opening on it. So when you're talking competition, you're going to get your strike points on that track. But the thing I'm getting to is the fact that our raccoon populations are so high at this point that there usually isn't a big demand for a cold-nosed dog. Who wants to stand out there for 2 hours when a coon hide's worth 5 cents, but plus points are worth $50,000?
There's no doubt about it. Necessity is the mother of invention. And some of that in our hounds has been bred that way, and some of it trained that way. But the flip side of that, back in the 80s, and especially early to mid 80s, the raccoon population was low enough that if you had a dog that just blew through the country looking for a hot track, there's many of those nights, especially in December, when you were wanting coon hides, that you may not have had a tracking system yet. You'd spend all night looking for your dog.
Yeah. You're going and find them in the next township.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or have to put a jacket down and come back the next day.
Yeah. I've unloaded dog boxes before. I had a little lightweight. Swiss Caps made one of those great dog boxes. It was super lightweight out of aluminum. You could practically load it and unload it with one hand, and stake that door open, come back the next morning, and your dog's laying in there waiting for you to come and pick them up.
Yeah, I had one of those old boxes myself.
Yeah, they're dandies. I've still got one. Oh yeah, I can throw it in and out of the truck, and super easy for summertime when you got to use your truck for other stuff anyway. But where's that leave us for the future, though? I mean, I just real quick, I want to talk on that, and then I want to get back to the meat and potatoes of this thing, because I got a few thoughts too. But where do you, with the mother of invention, necessity being the mother of invention, then where does this leave us for the future in our breeding program?
You and I have talked about this on some other the podcasts just briefly, and that is that we both believe that the type of dog that will hunt out the area that you put them in, and you can recast and tree another coon in that same area versus blowing out, is going to become more valuable in the future as, number one, the hunting territory dwindles down to nothing. And the fact that the cast is walking and walking and walking and walking to these dogs, all four directions. And if you can treat 2 or 3 coons in the middle of them, then that $50,000 is yours, not theirs.
Right. Yeah. Jim Ridge commented on that on a podcast, the podcast that I did with him. He was talking about that same thing, being able to score coons behind dogs that are blowing out. And so I think part of it is the nostalgia part. You get people in both camps. Some people are sitting there saying, what we had in the 80s and 90s is better than what we have today. And then you have the other people saying, no, it's easier to train a dog today than it was back in those days. And I think to speak on both parts of it, I don't know. I can go to a regular hunt now and draw much better dogs across the board and throughout the cast than back in the 80s. If you had a coon dog in the 80s that would take a track, stay treed, and do its job, you were going to win a cast because they were an anomaly, whereas today you show up at the local open event and you better be packing something because every dog in that cast is normally capable of treeing a real live raccoon and looking at it and scoring it.
I would agree with that. But if you think back to the 80s, you will also have to agree. If I had a dog that was not a good dog in itself, but would open quick and would cover a dog immediately and had a big mouth, you could also be a winner.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And you'd have a hard time winning with that dog today.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The old Me Too dog.
Yeah. If you were a good handler and had a dog like that, you could win a lot. And I can name some names and dogs, but I won't.
Well, let's do it. Let's name some names, Jerry. But some of it too is I think, the technology that we have. You mentioned Garmin's, and those tools have enabled us to hone a dog's skills at a much faster rate than what we could back in the 80s. I mean, I don't think I even got my first tracking system until I'm going to say it was 1991 as a Wildlife Solutions TRX 3S. Bought it from Wick Outdoor Works. And it took me a while to figure it out. But even with that Wildlife Materials collar, I still didn't have the capabilities of what we have to see what a dog's actually doing on the ground with these Garmin's.
No. If you, for example, I mean, you could buy Tritronics back then, and sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't. But
right,
even if they worked 100% of the time, if you would shock your dogs back in those days, you had to be 100% sure what they were doing.
Yeah.
And now with that big screen in your hand, you may not know exactly what they're doing, but you got a pretty good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can tell watching a screen, now if a dog's lining out and you can see it on the screen, then darn well what's going on there. And
sure.
and I can also tell when a dog's getting ready to tree a lot of times, just listening to them, start circle type, working small areas and boom, it's a lot of technology has made our life a lot easier in all aspects of life. But particularly in this instance.
Yeah. And you mentioned this before, and it's no small factor. The coon population is tremendous when you're trying to train a pup.
Right.
I mean, if you can walk out and get that young dog, you might hunt 2 or 3 hours and get that young dog where he could potentially smell, maybe not tree all of them, but smell, 4 or 5 coons. Back in the mid 80s, you'd be likely to put them on one.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I also think that for me, when I look at the trainability of dogs, I think you got to put the human factor in as well. It's my success rates have been much higher post 45 years old than they ever were prior to. And that's just because of, my personal growth, my experience as a trainer, breaking dogs. When do I get involved? When do I go overboard? I mean, I ruined a lot of dogs back in my 20s and 30s because I was too impatient. And so that human factor, it's a rare thing to find somebody, under 40 years old that has developed the patience to really bring the most out of a dog for a solid long-term dog.
Yeah. And as you've probably noticed over the years, there's people that are excellent at starting pups, but aren't real good after that. And there's people that are really good at taking a started pup and getting them to be fairly solid, and then they're done with them. And there's other people that they'll buy or someone else will buy a really good broke dog, and they're good. Their handler's good at taking that dog and just drilling it and getting it steady and like a clock running every night.
Right. Yeah, that's really the kind of the story of Big Country. Donnie started him as a puppy, got busy building a house, so I went and got him and put some hunting on him, and then got him to a certain point, and then Burkholder ended up taking him kind of to the next level, and then finally, John Strickland and Ashley Oxendine got their hands on him, and John took him to a whole different level.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example right there, perfect scenario. But overall, just your honest opinion, were the coon hounds of the 80s and 90s better than they are in 2024?
Well, to answer that, you would have to clarify better at what?
Just okay. Tree and raccoons.
I would say there's no doubt the dogs of today are better at that.
I think it speaks a lot too that if we haven't moved forward from the 80s and the 90s, then what have we been doing as breeders?
Right.
Overall, and I don't claim to be a breeder. I'm just saying breeders enhancing the breed, genetically moving forward. If we're not better now, then we've been doing something wrong for the last 40 years.
Absolutely. And the one thing you'll hear me talk about the hot nose, hard hunting, edge running dogs that win by bush and coons.
Yeah.
I don't want to give the wrong impression I'm running those dogs down, because I've had several myself and had a lot of fun with them. I'm not running them down. I'm just saying that's what it takes nowadays to win.
Well, I personally sent you a picture one time on my screen of a cornfield race, and it was in a text message deal. And you said that's a heck of a track, but if you're going to win, you don't want them spending all night in there. You need them on the edge where those coons are coming out of the cornfield. And It's just a different discussion that many that you and I have had over the years about styles and coon dogs and everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. You could take a dog that can handle a medium to cold track and run it exceptionally well, and put him in a cast, in a 2-hour cast. He might make 4 trees, see 3 coons and a den tree, did an excellent job. But some other dog has an automatic first strike, blows through the country and pushes 4 different coons. You're beat.
Yep, for sure. Well, I think it's just going to be one of those debates that continues. And I'm as much as a nostalgic type guy as anything. I mean, I like flintlock muzzleloaders and longbows but the good old days weren't always as good as what sometimes they're portrayed to be.
Absolutely.
I don't see anybody willing to throw their garments in the trash, and as you get older, you're not as into much to walk hunt and hit the tough spots that you could when you were 20 and 30. And a lot of different things. I mean, everything. I don't want to pack water to take a bath.
Well, and a good example of that is about 1983. I raised a litter off of a grandson of Finland River Joe that I had. And I'd bred him to a female that was a good tree dog. She wasn't what I'd call a great coon dog. He was, but what I bred it, the female I bred, had some good characteristics, but wasn't what I'd call a great coon dog.
Mm-hmm.
But she was out of Tennessee Lead and Tahoney Sally. So her breeding was solid. And me and some friends of mine fooled with every pup in that litter. So some got more attention than others, but they all got attention. But there was only one of them treeing by the time they were a year old.
Mm.
And there was only 2 or 3 treeing at all by the time they were 2 years old.
Yeah.
So the one debate that could be resolved simply, and that is, would you rather have a puppy today or a puppy from 1985? And the answer to that is simple. A pup today has got a way better chance. If you just pick one out of litter with your eyes closed, you got a better chance of making a dog that'll tree a coon, maybe not a coon dog, but a dog that'll tree a coon before 9 months of age than anything. And
right.
Sure, there were great dogs in the 80s, but how many did you have to sort through to get one?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I think that's going to do it to answer that question. I think you got 2 solid votes here that your potential for getting coon dogs is a lot higher now. And how do you sum it up, Jerry?
I would say that's an accurate statement, that your potential to get a dog that'll tree a coon from a litter is far greater now than they were before.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Are the if you take the very best dogs in the nation in 1985 versus the very best dogs in the nation today, I would say they could both compete against each other.
Interesting. Wouldn't it be cool to have a time machine just to be able to see it?
It would. Are there more great dogs right now than there ever was? I would say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Well, part of it is information too. We're living in the information age where everybody's packing a video camera and a phone and can post stuff on social media right away. And I think there was a day when some of the greatest coon dogs were tied behind people's barns that nobody ever heard of. But I don't think that's happening today. Somebody's going to find out about them.
I don't know where that barn is now, but I'd say it'd be hard to hide it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jerry, thanks for taking time to help us with that. And appreciate it, man.
No problem. Good talking to you, Chris.
Always a pleasure having you on.
Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. The Houndsman XP Podcast Network is powered by Cajun Lights. All of your lighting needs for hunting can be taken care of at Cajun Lights. They have 3 models of cap lights. I'm going to run through them real quick. You've got the Rougarou, which is their high-end light. If you're a competition hunter and you got to find that coon up in a tree and it's all riding on finding that coon, you'll want the Rougarou on your head. Next is the Bayou. That's a pretty standard light, but it's got packed with features. It's got multiple colors. It's got walking lights. It's got the red, the green, the amber. It's all built in right into that light. And then you have one of my personal favorites, the Micro Gator. The Micro Gator is an ultra lightweight cap light. It's got all the features of a white light, red, green, and amber. I've used this light for everything from finding bear tracks early in the morning to coon hunting at night to working on plumbing in the house, changing tires on the side of the road. My truck doesn't leave the driveway without a Cajun light in it, and that light is the Micro Gator. Every Cajun light is durable, made from the highest quality components, and it is backed by Cajun's top-rated customer service. Check out Cajun Lights. You can go to our website at houndsmanxp.com. Go to our sponsors page, hit that link, it'll take you right to Cajun Lights. Check them out. They got a lot of stuff to offer over at Cajun Lights. So there you have it, folks. It's one of those deals. And the reason I asked Jerry to be on, I know not all of you know who Jerry is. If you're a coon hunter and you've hunted PKC, you know who Jerry is. He competed for decades with his Salt Creek coon hounds. He did not mention his own hounds, to his credit, because he's that kind of guy. He's a humble guy. But he's placed in the final 4 of 2 different registries in the same year, with a little female called Salt Creek Jenny. But he's accomplished a lot. He's got several dogs in the Treem Walker Hall of Fame, and he's been doing this for a long time. And on top of that, he was the Coonhound Programs Manager at Professional Kennel Club, PKC, for, I don't even know, maybe, I think it was like 12 years. So he's been around a while, and he's seen a lot of stuff. And Jerry's one of my good friends, and I was happy to have him on. All right, moving on. Let's talk about elite nutrition stuff. And you guys have heard the episodes we did about elite nutrition. I can't tell you how impressed I've been with your response. We became elite nutrition dealers, have them on our website, and the response has been overwhelming. You guys have been buying this stuff nonstop. Every day I'm getting multiple orders for elite nutrition products. So thank you very much. I appreciate you doing that. I want to talk a little bit about some trends that I'm seeing when you're ordering. And if you go back and you listen to the podcast we did about elite nutrition products with Chip, it was just a couple weeks ago, then we laid it all out on how to use this stuff. And I still get tons of questions about different parts and pieces, and if one thing will work for another. Well, I just got to tell you, it's a system of, especially when you're talking about tick-borne disease treatment. The three products that you're going to need for that are the Rebalance BB, the Canine Guard, and the Happy Dog Plus. And you need enough product to last you 90 days. So you just need to take a little bit of extra precaution there, because I see you buying the product, and you're going to get a bottle of Rebalance, maybe the bigger container of Canine Guard, and then you buy the 5-ounce shaker of the Happy Dog Plus. Well, if you're going to run for 90 days on this stuff, you got to look at those volumes and make sure you're getting the right things. And so just, that's one thing I wanted to tell you. If you only use part of this thing, then you're going to have marginal results at best. I don't want anybody to feel like they're getting scammed. You know, I worry about that stuff. That stuff keeps me up at night. You're not going to be able to see positive results with a 5-ounce shaker of Happy Dog Plus. You got to make sure that you're buying the product that's going to carry you through the entire treatment. So to recap real quick, the Rebalance is the all-natural antibiotic replacement that you're going to give twice a day, 1 cc per 10 pounds of body weight. I mix the Guard and the Happy Dog Plus together in the feed every day and feed it to the dog. You can do, as we're getting into warmer weather, you can mix as much as 10 pounds of feed at a time, but I would strongly recommend that you make sure that you keep that bucket of feed. If you're going to mix 10 pounds of it up, you keep it someplace where it stays below 70 degrees. If you don't, you activate the probiotics in there, and it starts making your feed go funky. So just some tips. You know, I've had people say, well, can I store it? Can I mix more? Can I put it in a barrel? I would not recommend putting it in a barrel unless you've got a climate-controlled environment to keep that barrel in. You run the potential of ruining a lot of feed. If it's cold outside, wintertime, you know, I'm mixing 20 to 30 pounds at a time. It's no problem. But moving into this warmer weather, then I'm reducing the amounts of feed that I'm actually putting together with that. And also Essential Dog. Essential Dog's got that prebiotic and probiotic in it as well. And I've seen great results from the Essential Dog. Tough is on the Plus and the Canine Guard right now because he's got another bacterial infection issue going on, and I'm just putting him through the whole program to get him past it. That's really all I had to tell you about the Elite Nutrition products. I don't want you to go there and waste your money. I don't want you to go there and buy a week's worth and expect to see miracles. You're not. It's going to take you about a month for the dog's system to rise to the occasion, and the prebiotics and the probiotics and the diatomaceous earth and Essential Dog, to see all that stuff come together and start working. It's going to take you a few weeks. So I just don't want to see you waste your money on a 5-ounce shaker of this stuff and think you're going to see a miracle. You're not. Okay, that's just me being straight up with you. I appreciate everybody that's bought this stuff, but it's not a marketing scam to try to get you to buy more. But if you only use it for a week, 5 ounces is only going to treat 50 pounds of dog food, I guess. Maybe you'll see some results in that amount of time. But if you're treating for the Lyme's disease, then you're going to need a 90-day supply, or you're going to be disappointed and you're going to be disgruntled and you're going to think it doesn't work. So you can find all those products along with wound spray and canine punch and all the other stuff that goes with Essential Dog and Elite Nutrition products on our website in the shop. It's clearly marked there. So thanks for everybody that's been buying that stuff. Again, that's one of the things that helps us pay the bills here so we can keep bringing you a podcast. Last but not least, Chuck Reynolds asks a rhetorical question. I don't even know if you expected to get an answer on this, Chuck. But Chuck asks this question. Why do city people that don't like hunting move to the country where everybody hunts and then complain about it and try to end it? That is $1 million question right there. And while there's no definitive answer to that question that's going to resolve it in a podcast, I think it's something that we can all think about. We can all contemplate why that is. And since the question was asked, let's dissect it a little bit. I think it's worth having a conversation about. When that person decides they're going to move to the country, they may have different goals for why they moved there than they obviously didn't move there, and that wasn't their goal. I'm going to move to the country and stop hunting. They can do that from an apartment in New York City. We see that all the time. They can do that from a metropolitan area and use social media and do all that stuff. So I don't think they have the goal of moving to the country and stop hunting. But I have to ask the question, why do they develop that opinion? Is it because of negative experiences that they have with hunting and hunters? It's a long pause there. I think it's paramount that each of us take the responsibility of representing hunting very seriously. I understand exactly what Chuck is saying, but I've also seen other hunters move to my neighborhood, buy property, and then change my permission and my access to the property that I hunted for a long time. So it's not just city people. It's ignorance across our culture. And when I say ignorant, I don't mean dumb. I mean it's that they don't have any information. So when I say we take the responsibility very seriously, the time to make friends with those landowners is not during hunting season, not when you've got dogs on their property that's upsetting them, or 2:00 in the morning on the roadside with the sheriff's deputy being the mediator or the game warden being the mediator. The time to build those relationships is right now in the spring of the year when everybody's out in the garden. You're driving by a place that neighbors that butts up against a big piece of property that you hunt on, and you look out there and these country people are out there in their little TikTok garden, and they're making their reels for TikTok because all of a sudden they're homesteaders, and you just pull in there and you introduce themselves. One of the things that Mark Dufresne told me, and he likes to share this story a lot, is about Roy Clark. Roy grows a bunch of tomatoes, tons of tomatoes, used to sell them commercially. And every year when the tomatoes are ripe, then he starts making his rounds. He makes sure that all of the people that are living close to areas where he bear hunts know who he is, and he goes with a smile on his face. He's going with a peace offering in his hand and hooking those folks up with tomatoes. And that's just an example of what we can do. There are several other things. If you're a member of a local coon hunting club, then I guarantee you that the majority of the property that your members utilize to run competition hunts and to coon hunt on are not owned by the club members. They're owned by other people. So over at DuPont, Indiana, every year they have a landowner appreciation dinner, and they invite all of the landowners to come to the club. They put on a great big feed, the whole deal, smokers going and all the sides and all the desserts. And they just invite the community in. They open their doors to the community and say, this is who we are and what we do. So while the question itself can be frustrating, and on the surface you're like, yeah, man, that seems to be how it is. I know it seems like dark days, but there's still a lot more that we as houndsmen can be doing to bridge those gaps and keep people. Maybe they'll never hunt with us. We don't need any more hunters in the woods. Maybe that's your stance. But at least they're not going to vote against us in the fall. They can put a face and some humanity to the guys riding down the road in that hound rig during bear season. So, food for thought. I know we're never going to correct all of it. Some people, you just can't change their minds on any of it. They do move out there with predisposed ideas about hunting. But it's really up to us to take the responsibility of how we represent hunting every time we take to the field. That's going to do it for this AMA Friday. Thanks for tuning in. And again, watch for the photo of me and Tough on our Facebook group riding down the road. You can't miss it. It's Tough the Yog Terrier and me in my truck, and we're going to start asking you for questions. Thanks for everybody that submitted a question. Keep them coming. And until next time, thanks for tuning in to the Houndsman XP podcast. This is Fair Chase.